Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the impact of cuts in petroleum prices and whether our economy, what kind of effect this will have on our economy. Will it get the boost that we want, of course, and also as far as economies are concerned, all over the world, small economies, large economies are suffering because of the situation, because of the pandemic at this point. Let's talk about all of that. Let's talk about the external factors and the impact of those on our economy at this time, whether we will be able to sustain the kind of shocks that it may cause as far as our own economy of our own magnitude, our own scale is concerned. We'll talk about that. We'll also be talking about the strategy of the government at this point. Where and how can we insulate our economy? Where and how can we move towards providing as many benefits as we can, providing as many saves as we can for our own people, for our own economy. All of that today. Before we go on to discuss, we'll be showing you a short report on the effect of the cuts on petroleum prices.
The government has made a massive cut in petroleum products following a dip in the global oil prices due to the coronavirus-induced lockdowns. The decision has been announced by the Finance Ministry in a balancing act to share the drastic fall in international oil prices between the consumers already affected by coronavirus-induced lockdown. Under the announcement, the ex-depot price of petrol was fixed at 81 rupees 58 pesos per litre, showing a reduction of 15 rupees 15% from the existing rate of 96 rupees 58 pesos. The ex-depot price of high-speed diesel has been set at 80 rupees 10 pesos per litre instead of the existing rate of 107 rupees 25 pesos, showing a reduction of 27 rupees 14 paisa or 25.3%. Similarly, the government has fixed the ex-depot price of kerosene at 47 rupees 44 pesos per litre, down by 30 rupees and 1 paisa per litre. That's about 38.75% when compared to the old price of 77 rupees and 45 pesos. The lower oil prices are a net positive for Pakistan's macros, especially the external account, as 26% of Pakistan's imports are oil price driven. Decreased oil prices will also help the government pocket part of the lower oil prices in electricity tariffs, which would decrease the circular debt. The lower oil prices will also lead to a neutral decrease in inflation. 26% decline on average in petroleum products would have an estimated direct impact of 2.6% in the form of decline in CPI inflation in the coming months. Pakistan is a net importer of petroleum products and meets almost 85% of its needs through imports. Average petrol sales are touching 700,000 tons per month against monthly consumption of around 600,000 tons of diesel. However, the sales of petrol have dropped in recent weeks due to the lockdown. The diesel consumption has also dropped after the lockdown but has since picked up owing to the wheat harvest. The sales of kerosene and LDO are generally less than 11,000 and 2,000 tons per month respectively. At present, benchmark Brent crude prices have plunged by a massive 30% to $20 a barrel from about $27 per barrel on the 25th of March. The Brent crude price has tumbled by almost 65% since February the 25th. This is the steepest fall in oil prices in recent history.
We have with us today Dr. Gulfaraz Ahmed, who's former Federal Secretary Petroleum. Thank you for joining us today. We will also be joined by Khurram Shehzad, who is an economic analyst, and Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, who's an executive director with SDPI. Gulfaraz Sahab, you've seen the report also. You've seen, I'm sure that you have your own way of calculating how this will affect the economy at this time, particularly with the situation being what it is. You know, we've had the Prime Minister come and say again and again how as a country we can't afford to have a complete lockdown, considering our own economic situation. You know, as a country where we're a third world country, we have those realities that we can't ignore. But do you think this will have an impact on the overall economy? Also, you know, we saw Asad Umar also said today, he was talking about a CPI, a consumer price inflation, when he said that, you know, it's been consistently falling for the last 3 months now by about 6%, and that, you know, this will further cause that also to fall. Do you agree with all that?
Yes, I do. First of all, there's no doubt that all countries of the world, once they start seeing massive effect upon their economies, they would have to be wise enough, practically wise, to do what smart lockdown actually means. Smart lockdown means that we continue to save the population from the local spread of the virus.
Right.
There's no let up. But then we selectively, those areas of the economy which we could safely initiate, we should. Now, this is a very fortuitous thing that while the economy in Pakistan is facing a massive challenge like economies elsewhere in the world, that we also had a massive drop in the petroleum prices. So that puts you know, first of all, it takes away the stress on our import bill.
Right.
And second, right now, it gives the government an opportunity to give a stimulus to the economy, selectively, for example, the construction industry and also the movement of particularly the harvest time, and there's so much of requirement of heavy machinery, the harvester, the thresher, the tractors, the trucks to move
And fuel
them out.
also, right?
Yes. So at this point in time, this particular reduction in price goes directly into moving the wheels where the wheels are needed. So that's very timely, and it's fortuitous the government is able to give a stimulus to the economy while the economy is facing a challenge. Looking at the massive decrease, particularly in the case of diesel, which is going to be the main fuel for businesses, for commercial purposes. And then they have also passed on a very big relief to the common consumers of kerosene oil, those consumers who do not have the access to natural gas. They also have, I think in the case of kerosene, the decrease is massive. And I personally feel that if now, with this stimulus for movement and also opening the economy, the selected sectors, the smart lockdown, we should be able to minimize the negative impact in our economy. I also would say that most of the time the governments usually are very jealous. They save more money and pass on less to the people. But at this time, it's a smart move. It's a well thought out reduction. And it's not that the government has passed on all the reduction to the people. No. The price of petroleum products, they fell massively. That they have also increased the petroleum levy. Right. That means that the government too is going to get help from this international price oil reduction. And this price reduction is, since they have not passed on total reduction to the people.
You're saying that they've done the smart thing, they've only passed, but they have passed down sufficient reduction.
Actually, this is the smart thing, because let's say right now the price of oil has started increasing. Today it's $25. In your report 2 days back it was $20. So even if the price increases to, let's say, above $30.
Do you think that it's a possibility?
The possibility up to $30, because the massive reduction in the OPEC oil production has become effective from 1st of May. So as a result of it, it could go up to $30.
Okay.
And even though the reduction is massive, but there is still the international aviation industry, the shipping, the trains, rails, public transport will take time to be back on the wheels. And therefore, for the month of May, I personally feel that it should remain around about $30. So this reduction that they've given now, they will still be able to maintain next month, even if the price of oil,
prices do increase.
even if the price was to increase to $30. This is something intelligent about, because we, the month of May and month of June are going to be very critical in igniting the economy, and during that period the price of fuels will remain substantially lower.
Right, I'm going to go to Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Ji, Dr. Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Ji, what's your opinion on this? I hope you could hear us when we were talking about the reduction in fuel prices and how that will perhaps revive the economy, which is what the government is aiming for. Gul Faraz Saab was also saying that, you know, this is a smart move, and within the next month, when things, the prices may go up a notch, we will be able to sustain this reduction even then. How do you agree with this?
Yes, of course, in principle, that is a wise move. But going back, when I look at the whole oil price scenario, I think this is the manifestation of what many multilateral institutions, those have been warning, and they have been warning of a very severe global recession. This drop of oil prices globally, be it in Western Texas or Brent or Arabian Light, the Gulf countries from where we import, it is the sign of early recession. Now, initially it would help Pakistan, as it is helping, and we have already reduced our oil prices for the consumers. But then we have to look at another aspect of it, and that is the remittances that our expats have been sending from the Gulf countries. So, of course, those remittances, they are going to come down because of the slowdown in economy in Gulf countries and in oil producing countries. Many of our Pakistani expats, they would be losing jobs. Many of them, they are already coming back. Many more, I'm expecting that they would be coming back in next few months. So that would be a flip side of it. And the second flip side is that if there is a global recession, and the global recession in oil producing countries, most of which are our trading partners, except the Latin American countries or Russia. Then of course our export orders, they will face a hit. So again, as I said, that it's a catch-22 situation, and it is a sign of disinflation. Disinflation means reduction in prices, temporary reduction in prices. But the irony is that we don't know how temporary this temporary phenomenon is, whether it would last for a few more months, whether it will last for another year or maybe longer.
Right,
no one knows
unless we don't know at this time. We don't know how long this will last, of course. Ji, going back,
yes.
Ji, Gul Faraz Saab, you...
I think Dr. Suleri always makes a very relevant point.
Let me interrupt you. Let me go to let me go to Khurram Shahzad, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Ji, Khurram Saab, you heard what Dr. Abid was also saying. You heard what Gul Faraz Saab said. There is a slight difference of opinion on the way things are. Do you think the global recession, of course, it will impact our economy, but on what scale do you think? I mean, we have seen that earlier on external factors have, you know, not impacted Pakistan to the extent that they have other countries. Do you agree with that?
Well, as far as the impact is concerned, of course, Pakistan economy does not operate separately. It is part of the world, of course. And the good thing is that our trade is not as much as other countries have. And, you know, we hardly contribute about, less than 1% to the global total trade. So as far as the impact is concerned, of course, we are going to get impacted, but not to an extent as other emerging markets like India, China, and, you know, the likes are going to be impacted, number one. The downside is, of course, our own lockdown, and that is not being implemented in a letter spirit. And the impact is going to be, you know, hard from our own domestic side. And another downside is that we don't seem to have a strategy to actually, you know, get benefited from this lockdown and, you know, address the issue at hand. The third factor is the liquidity.
You don't think that as far as this lockdown is concerned, the smart lockdown, which is being advocated, which is being talked about, which is being implemented to an extent, is the right way forward to boost the economy? Because, you know, like earlier also we've been discussing that the Prime Minister has gone to some lengths to explain how a country like ours cannot go for a complete lockdown, considering the fact that we're a third world country, considering the fact that our economy is where it is. So don't you think those factors will weigh in also?
See, the point is, it's not about creating growth or creating, jobs at the moment. The issue at hand is how to manage or how to survive the crisis, you see? So surviving or managing the crisis requires a strategy. It's not about, creating demand, cutting interest rates across the board and, cutting down the utilities and providing, the needed support. Of course, that's required. But the point is how we are going to manage or survive the crisis. The secondary step would be, of course, to revive the economy, to the growth and everything, you see. So Prime Minister is right in its own way. But on the other hand, we don't seem to have a strategy at a country level that actually addresses the issue at hand, number one. The secondary, steps are, of course, providing relief to the poor, and the right thing that has been done is basically a balancing act that the government did yesterday, and they cut down, the oil prices, and that will of course impact cost of doing business for the businesses, for industries as well, and equally for the common man. But the point is, the leftover benefit that the government has right now out of this oil decline windfall, that should be used either to lower down the cost of doing business on the businesses right now, as well as on the common man. Let me tell you how much is going to impact the inflation numbers in the coming months. You see, the prices are down by 26% on average. The government has provided a relief of about 26% from the last level. This is going to impact inflation positively, and to an extent that it is going to impact the inflation numbers by about 2 to 3%, because our inflation basket has 10% share of oil prices and the electricity, gas, and petroleum prices, and so on and so forth. So positive for inflation, of course, positive for the common man. The second thing is that government is going to hold some more taxes in its hands in order to provide relief indirectly to the common man and the businesses, of course, so that our employment could sustain, our growth could sustain going forward. And I believe that government is going to do that, hopefully, and that is going to, of course, support the economy in the next 2 to 3 months. But the larger strategy is still required so that our economy should survive the crisis, and the next approach would be to actually push for growth.
Right. Let me go on to Dr. Gul Faraz. I'll come back to you. Dr. Gul Faraz, you were, just going to explain.
First of all, I just wanted to make a comment on Dr. Suleria. There's no doubt that when the international economy goes down, there is a recession. That these days, all countries' economies are interconnected, and so will Pakistan be affected. There's no doubt that whatever local effect of the layoffs, the lockdown that we are going through, that will further affect Pakistan's economy. But given that, this particular move that we are commenting upon, the oil price, petroleum product price reduction, which has come at a right time, when you just open the construction industry, for example, when we have the harvesting at its peak. So the timing is right.
But Gul Faraz, when you talk about opening the construction industry, you talk about taking measures like that. Considering the situation at this time, those things are perhaps not possible to an extent where they could reap huge benefits. Isn't that true?
First of all, the people, particularly the people who depend upon day jobs, who work in construction industry, movement of goods and other things, they have suffered so much during last 6 to 8 weeks that now that the smart lockdown initiates and they're given permission in selective areas, they too will observe precautions so that they do not get pushed back to the same state. So the timings are right, and my feeling is that if Pakistan's economy was going to suffer major setback, this to me, this particular timing, this particular reduction, this is giving a fillip to the initiation of the economy would be very helpful.
Right. I'm going to go to Abid Saab. Abid Saab, do you agree? Do you think that this is an auspicious time, like Gul Faraz Saab is saying, to open the construction industry along with taking these measures, and then, you know, perhaps they will have the kind of results the government envisages?
See, we are now trying to adjust to live in a new normal, and the new normal is still unfolding. Of course, whatever opportunities come in our hand, we have to capitalize upon them. We need to take maximum precaution, because in this battle between life and livelihoods, neither we can compromise on life security and safety, nor we can compromise on livelihood. And that is extremely catch-22 situation, not only with Pakistan, but also with all other developing countries. And I think right now it's the right approach that with all the precautions, whichever sectors we can open, we should open. But then the important thing is the onus of getting SOPs implemented is on employers. And that is where I think where all the provincial governments as well as the federal government, they have to do their act proper.
You're saying that taking the necessary precautions will have to be, you know, the responsibility of the government, and they will have to be the first priority for the provinces as well as the center.
Yes, because of course announcing an SOP is one thing, but then getting it implemented on ground, that is extremely difficult. And I'm sure that none of the government, be it provincial government or federal government, would like that their SOPs get compromised. And that's where we need to have the maximum focus now, if we really want some of the sectors in the economy to flourish and to start operating even within this pandemic.
Right. I will come back to you. I'm going to go to Abid Saab ji. Abid Saab, sorry, I'm going to go to Khurram Shehzad Saab ji. Khurram Saab, as far as SOPs is concerned, I think one of the things, important things that Abid Saab mentioned is that, you know, in the wake of this kind of a smart lockdown, when you are you know, you have no choice really but to open certain sectors. You have no choice but to give, you know, certain sectors that kind of latitude where, you know, they have to be open, they have to be functioning, with our economy being where it is. The SOPs have to be observed, and that would be the responsibility of the government, provincial and center, to make sure that those precautions are taken, you know, considering the situation, considering that we don't want to be hit. We've been lucky so far. We've seen the statistics. We know that, you know, we are not as bad as some of the other countries around the world. We've been very lucky so far. Do you think that kind of those kind of precautions can be taken? Do you think that, you know, with this kind of a move where we have no choice when we're opening certain sectors, we can actually go through this with taking those necessary measures, with making sure that we implement those precautions?
Well, see, there's no question of whether to have a lockdown or not. Lockdown has to be there. Of course, the entire world is following it, and most probably the top world economies are following it. So we have to follow a lockdown. And you know, just like Sulay Saab rightly mentioned, that there's a difference between implementing a lockdown and, you know, having it or announcing it. And you know, the question is how to actually strategize or have a strategy to actually, you know, provide food, medical supplies, and liquidity. The most of all, liquidity is being short. You know, so how to provide liquidity, food, and medical supplies first to poorest of the poor, and then, you know, all others, all the rest. So there's no question that there has to be a lockdown, but the strategy has to be clear, number one.
But we're talking about a lockdown, we're talking about, you know, the fact that, of course, we, like you mentioned, the essentials have to be provided. Unfortunately, we saw what happened, you know, when there was a talk about distributing rations, there was talk about distributing essentials. We saw, I'm sure that you also did, we saw what happened. There were clusters of people, there was, you know, people had to be controlled, measures had to be taken, because for, again, that social distancing, all of those measures, they will have to be observed at some cost to the governments, to the provincial and the central government, because we saw what happened with people when they were coming to take essentials. It's not something that will be that easy to implement.
Of course. You see, there has to be some sort of openings, at least for the vital industries, and the supply chain has to go on. And otherwise the economy would come to a standstill completely, and food supplies, medical supplies, and what we are talking about would not be possible to implement. So there has to be something going on. So the bare minimum economic levels should continue. But see, the point is how we are managing the lockdown, and within the lockdown, how we are actually being able to provide essentials to our people, while at the same time getting them implemented, getting them disciplined, so that the curve should continue to get flattened. So this is not happening, as per the figures and numbers and all that. So we have to have a strategy that I have been emphasizing upon, and it has to be from the federal as well as from the provincial side both. They have to sit down together and have a coordinated, one single, focused strategy to move forward. Otherwise, we are going to have a very difficult time in the coming months, I fear.
Do you think we are moving towards flattening the curve with the numbers being what they are? We have unfortunately seen an increase, however small, however insubstantial.
You have answered your question, because we are not not being able to flatten the curve, because the numbers are on the rise, and that toll is actually on the rise. That's more concerning. So you have to have a different strategy. That was what I've been actually emphasizing on.
Right. I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Gulfaraz. Dr. Gulfaraz, what about things like public transport, which are essential to industries like your construction, like, day laborers, all of that. And we can't, considering what the situation is, open public transport. How will that go hand in hand with opening these different sectors?
Well, that's a very crucial point, because as far as the movement of labor is concerned, they do need public transport reactivated. Now the point was made by Khurram that the SOPs which would be made, the SOPs would be instituted by the governments, federal or provincial, but there some responsibility has been placed on the employers, the factory owners, that they ought to also observe the SOPs, make sure that within the premises of the factories or industry, the responsibility shifted to them. Now, if the government is very strict in monitoring the SOPs, observing of SOPs, then the employers would fear that they would be shut down. Now, it would not be the industry, but the individual employer would be shut down. Maybe that serves some kind of incentive.
Gulfaraz, what about,
But I just going to make a point.
Okay, please go on.
That this is a nation of motorbikers. I think the percentile figure of motorbikes in this country is higher than anywhere in the world, and these are not the recreational motorbikers. This motorbike is an essential part of our economy. And I personally feel with 80 rupees a litre of petrol, which is the motorbikers' fuel, if we can now enforce a discipline, the corona discipline on the motorbikers, and that is of course our police, traffic police and others, they can very quickly turn the wheel of the economy. I would certainly defer to Dr. Salaria that doesn't really mean that we would not be hurting that much as far as national economy is concerned. But I'm saying that given that all of us, all the countries of the world and Pakistan will hurt, we want to minimize that.
We want to minimize the impact, of course.
So from that point of view, we are looking at what can be the policy steps that we can generate in time, slowly and gradually, that we minimize the impact. There's no doubt that the curve is not flat at this point in time. The curve is still rising fairly sharply. Maybe as we test more, we'll get more.
Right.
But then that is not the only point. If there were people who were unfortunately losing lives. And even though we had not tested them, even then we would get alarmed.
Right.
But there is no alarming death rate, unexplained death rate in the
Right.
country, and therefore we feel that in terms of the death rate, we are at this point in
Right.
time
Let me go to
not
Dr.
alarming.
Abid ji.
Yes.
Abid sir, we've been talking about the fact that, of course, some industries like construction that have been opened, and with public transport, we are where we are with that. We can't, and like, Dr. Gul Faraz is saying, the responsibility will ultimately fall, or to some extent will fall on the business owners, on them being observing all the SOPs, on them taking all the precaution vis-a-vis their employees and all of that. But an interesting thing that came to that I saw today was a meat packing district in Iowa, America, where the proximity of workers is such where they felt that that it was impossible to observe precautions like social distancing, and unfortunately we also have those kind of industries. We also have work that where by the very nature the proximity can't be just reduced. So what do we do with that, and what kind of measures do we take there?
You see, many industries, they are taking quite sharp decision. For example, I know in corporate sector they have formed teams, team A, team B, team C, and the groups, they are not allowed to intermingle, they are not allowed to eat together, so that a group of 8 or 10 persons, they are after testing and after screening, when they are it is confirmed that they are negative for coronavirus, they are sent on a shift, and they are sent on a shift for then long hours, and then they are replaced by second team. So I think there are already strategies available, as I said in the beginning of the program, that now we need to learn and adapt to this new normal. This is the new normal, and it is not going to leave us very soon. So this corona, for example, if it stays till 2021, it doesn't mean that we will stop our normal day-to-day businesses. We would have to continue some of them, but we need to think of innovative ways of doing it, and we need to think of safe ways of doing it. And of course, in the industries where physical proximity is important, where workers, they have to work in close contact with each other. It is just like we are living in our families. So the family members, they are of course living in close physical proximity to each other, but the mere reason that all of them, they are negative, it means that they are
but
not
the family members don't go to work in the morning and come back. In this case, they will have to go home to their family members. So of course there is that risk, which of course we can take measures to minimize, but it is still there.
Yeah, the corporate sector, for example, now they have prolonged the shifts. So they are asking their workers to work in a long shift, maybe of 20 hours, 24 hours, and then go home. It's this very similar approach like you can see in case of paramedics. So in most of the hospitals, they are asked to come for a shift of 3-4 days, and then they are sent back, and another shift comes. So we will have to think of something like that if we really want to keep our economy revolving, as well as we want to remain safe from COVID-19. So screening, massive screening, testing, and then innovative and smart ways of employing our workers at the workplaces.
Right, I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Khurram Saab ji. Khurram Saab, do you think that, perhaps one way to deal with this, of course, we've talked about this, it's been said already, is testing on a massive scale, which we haven't yet been able to do. Perhaps if we could do that, and if we move towards that, then we would have the right numbers. We would also then be able to implement the kind of smart lockdown the way we want to, smartly, and we will know which clusters where, and it'll be easier for us because we'll know more. We haven't unfortunately been able to do that to the extent that we should have by now.
This is the key. Testing is the key. The more we test, the more we'll be able to know the impact and the scale of the pandemic in our country, of course. So testing is, of course, the key, and everyone knows about it. But the implementation has been, a lukewarm sort of thing so far. So testing, more and more testing would get you the right numbers, the right data to actually,
Why do you think, in
base
your
your decision
opinion,
on.
I mean, why do
Sorry?
you think we haven't been able to go towards, that kind of massive testing that we need? Of course, we keep on hearing that we have the requisite testing kits, we have the gear, we have all the essentials, but we haven't seen that kind of massive testing. What do you think? Do you think the government is perhaps waiting and going day to day? They're trying to assess the situation more before they move towards it?
I mean, be it provincial government or the federal government, they're trying their best, and it's a function of resources as well. We're not a high resource country, of course, and
Right.
we've been suffering on the fiscal side as well. Our taxes are not that much. Our expenditures are more non-productive and more on the higher side. So it's about resources as well. It's about handling the crisis as well. And this is a new crisis, of course, and new to all. And we all are learning out of it. And I think going forward we will learn better, and with time we'll be able to handle it better. But I mean, given the situation, what we can do is basically dependent upon a couple of hard decisions, and the number of decisions that we should take is both on the monetary side and the fiscal side in order to support economy, and on the social side, of course, a number of decisions related to relief efforts should be done at the earliest. I've been saying time and again that we have to act fast. We have to take big decisions and act fast. Timing is the key.
Do you think that the fact that, I don't know if this is linked or not, but do you think that we saw the dollar rise and then, fall a little bit in the last couple of days? Do you think that the fact that, the oil prices, the reduction in oil prices overall will have any impact for us there as far as rupee is concerned, with regard to inflation, with regard to dollar, the prices?
Dollar inflow is going to be more than the outflows because the trade is being hampered. Plus, you are going to get enough relief on the fiscal side. Your fiscal room is going to be a bit better than what it was pre-COVID. So I see it as a blessing. Quote unquote. I mean, you call it a blessing because pre-COVID we did not have this opportunity to actually defer our repayments. To have more unilateral, multilateral financing at a lower cost, and getting our debt forgiven to a certain extent, plus having interest rates cut to this extent, and there's going to be more interest rate cut in the next a week or two, because inflation has already gone down and it's about 8.5%. 3 months back it was hovering around 14.5%, so it's almost half the number. So we are going to have more interest rate cuts, more fiscal financing, more growth-driven, underpinning reasons to have our economy back on track for good. So I see it as an opportunity. And your point regarding currency is that we're going to have a better rupee against dollar because our inflows are going to be much more than the outflows, courtesy COVID-19. But going forward, we have to manage all of this. It's about management. It's about survival. It's about taking key decisions. I've been saying this, we have to go fast, have big decisions timely so that we are able to not only handle the crisis, but put our economy back on track for good.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your very valuable input. Gulfaraz Sahab, do you agree? Of course, we need timely decisions. We need to, move towards massive testing to know more, to have the right numbers so that we can go forward. Like I said, we can know more.
When we talk about massive testing, there's no doubt that we have resource constraint. We cannot carry out massive testing with imported material. Despite all the effort, the NDMA,
but we have had help from China. They haven't been.
No, but that is coming from outside. We still do not have the capacity for more than 40,000 tests a day. In fact, we have to reach up to 40,000. And look at 220 million people. Testing is very crucial and critical for those people who are carriers of the virus, but they have no symptoms, and therefore they don't report to the hospitals. And that may be a very large number. So in order to isolate those people who are at this point in time mixing with the family, we do need testing. But I personally feel that testing would remain a very serious challenge for Pakistan. And I don't know, it's not a proven fact, but if the rise in temperature is going to be some saving grace, like today it was 40 degrees C in Karachi, will those things help a little bit? So I think testing will remain a challenge. We should do as much as we can. We have to do random testing. When you do random testing, then you come to know what proportion of the population has already been exposed to the virus.
Right,
they develop.
And like you said, the more important people who are actually carriers, but they don't have any symptoms, those
and
are
they
the
mix
ones
very freely. Those are at this point in time going freely about the business within the families abroad.
Right.
I think as the curve continues to remain steep, as our casualty rates, both infection as well as the mortalities is rising,
Right.
we will have the challenge to increase our testing capacity. But more importantly, we would have to have campaign of public awareness.
Right, of course.
That is where
Very true,
I
very
personally
true.
see at this point in time, our people are taking it very lightly. And if we do have smart lockdown, selective businesses opening,
Then the public awareness is of course more important than...
and the public awareness would have to be our driving force. If we can do that, we should be able to meet the challenge.
Right, I'm going to
Testing
go to
will
Abid Saab.
always remain a
Ji,
challenge.
Abid Saab, before we close, you agree, of course, do you think that, public awareness is a huge, yes, as far as our people are concerned, people who don't have any symptoms but can be carriers. So, when you take smart lockdown, in that perspective, you need precautionary measures, you need people to know how and when social distancing, self-isolation, all of those things. And for that, public awareness is, of course, another thing that will, be the responsibility of the government as well as, private individuals, anybody who can actually, do whatever they can.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dr. Saab. Definitely public awareness is a key. And the second thing, we still have some false sense of security that perhaps we have got some sort of resilience or we have got some sort of immunity against this disease, which is not the case. If we look at the projections, the first 5,000 cases, they appeared in 45 days, and then the next 5,000 in another 10 days, and then the next 5,000 in 7 days. And now, since last 2 days, the numbers, they are 900 plus in any 24 hours. So this is, the curve is rising very steeply, and it is in our own benefit. I think each one of us, we have to show this sense of responsibility. Governments, they can only provide information. Governments, they can only do to a certain extent whatever governments are doing, be they provincial governments or the federal government. But then it comes to me, and if I, as a responsible member of society, not only take care of myself but also other members of society and my family members, I think that's where the buck stops, and that is the approach that we need to get implemented.
Right. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri. Thank you for being with us, Khurram Shehzad Saab. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Gul Faraz Saab. Thank you for being with us. As far as the kind of we don't have a choice but to have the kind of smart lockdown that the government is talking about, considering the economy, with the oil prices being slashed down. Of course, it gives the consumers a certain advantage. But in the wake of COVID-19, the situation being what it is, of course, management taking key decisions on time by the government, but also social responsibility, which again and again is very, very important. Whatever little we can do as media, as private individuals, to educate each other, to take that kind of responsibility, to take that kind of precautionary measures that are needed at this time for each and every one of us, so that we as a country can ride through this storm that's unfortunately at this time riding all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.